There's one thing that gets me super hyped, and I mean super hyped. It's when other people want to figure out how to break into the wedding industry. I love it. I'm here for it. I actually have an entire podcast dedicated to helping other planners get started because I think there's a need for you. I think you belong here. I would love for you to have a seat at the table. I'd love for you to jump into this. But I also want you to jump into this with both eyes wide open. There seems to be this misconception that being a wedding planner, it just means that you're rolling in the dough. And today's video is actually going to be from my podcast, the Union Podcast, where I break down 6 uncomfortable truths about being a wedding planner. So whether you are interested in breaking into the industry or you're just a looky-loo who wants to peek behind the scenes and see what all this hullabaloo is about, I am thrilled to share this podcast with you. 1, because I'm terrible at talking about it. Y'all probably didn't even know that I had one. And 2, I think there's a lot of value packed into it, if I do say so myself.
There are some uncomfortable truths that we need to talk about when it comes to running a wedding industry business. And I don't want to say that like no one talks about them, because I'm sure people do in certain capacities, and I'm sure there's a podcast out there that exists. I'm not naive or full of myself enough to think that I'm the only person saying these things, but there is this general glossiness that comes with running a wedding industry business, that comes from being a wedding planner. It's like, oh, it's so shiny and fun, and I'm realizing that like there is a lot that me included, that I'm just kind of glossing over and that I'm not really talking about because it's uncomfortable and no one wants to say it. I don't want to be the person to deliver this information, but I really do wish that someone had sat me down and said, Jamie, you're going to need to take a seat and take some notes, and we're going to need to walk through some things together. When I first got started, because there's so much of this industry that I love, but there's so much of this industry, and I'm not going to bite the hand that feeds me. I shouldn't put it like that. I'm obsessed with my job. I love planning weddings. I love content creation. When people ask what I do, I'm like, I'm a wedding planner who makes videos and podcasts and stuff. So it's an incredible business to be a part of. I have a full-on mastermind that I teach people how to run wedding industry businesses. I'm not biting the hand that feeds me, but we need to have a real chat. So today we're going to talk about 6 uncomfortable truths for starting your own wedding industry business. Who's excited? With an intro like that, I don't know who wouldn't be. I am trying out this recording my video at the same time that I'm recording the audio. So on my end of things, it feels a little scattered because I'm like more than just audio this time. So if you are watching this on YouTube, then you clearly are getting like a full frontal experience. Hello, welcome. If you are just listening to audio, then God bless you. I really truly hope that a lot of this makes sense. Uncomfortable truth number 1. This is not a get-rich-quick scheme. I don't know what perpetuates this. I really don't. People think that wedding planners are going to make just a gob ton of money. Like you're going to be like, I'm going to plan weddings and I'm going to plan $100,000 weddings and I'm going to make 10% of the wedding. There is this idea that wedding planners, especially for couples who see this price tag, maybe you charge $2,000 for a wedding or $5,000 for a wedding or whatever it happens to be. There is this idea that wedding planners make a lot of money. There is this idea that working in the wedding industry is just going to be like a cash cow. And that is so not the case. How long will it take? That's a conversation that I have all the time. How long will it take until this can be profitable? How long will it take until I can do this as a sole income, until I can provide for my family? I don't have an answer for you because there's so many factors that come into play with this, but it's gonna take longer than you think. How much money will I make in the next year? How much money will I make in the next 2 years? Again, that's literally entirely up to you. A little quick math for you and for me, if you will. If you charge $2,000 per wedding and you do 50 weddings per year, pretty simple math. We'll keep it nice and basic just so it's easy to like math. That equals out to $100,000 a year. That sounds great, right? Only 50 weddings and only charging $2,000. But that's hoping and praying that you get some double headers so you're not working 50 weekends out of the year. And that is a ton of work depending on where your boundaries are at, depending on what you're saying yes to, depending on what you're saying no to. 50 weddings a year is a ton of missed birthday parties. It's a ton of saying no to going out with friends. It's a ton of no vacation time. 50 weddings a year, if you are not strategic about doing double headers, is practically no social life unless you have someone else who's in the industry and is willing to meet with you throughout the week. Now, if you charge $5,000 per wedding and then you work 20 weddings a year, of course, that's a lot more palatable of a number, right? Then we are all of a sudden making more per hour than we were before, but charging $5,000 per wedding means you're probably putting forth a lot more effort than for $2,000 a wedding. So you can see this exchange starts to feel like a really big demand on your time. 50 weddings is a lot. 20 weddings is a lot. I have no idea how long it's going to take for you to be financially independent. I have no idea how long it's going to take for you to feel comfortable like you can run this business with just the income that you're receiving from this. I don't know if you can buy a house from it. I don't know if you can afford a car payment. All of this is dependent on you. I will tell you that when I first got started, my husband and I had a sit down conversation, and he's like, well, I anticipate this not making money for like the first year or two. And I was like, how dare you, sir? That is presumptuous of you. And how dare you say that? You guys, I didn't make really any money for the first year or two. I chose not to take any money out of the business. I chose to put the money back into the business. It's not like I didn't have some sort of income coming in. There was money coming in, but it wasn't anything remotely close to being sustainable for an extended period of time. So the uncomfortable truth is that this is not a get-rich-quick scheme, and you will probably need an alternative form of income for the first year or two. Unless you're going all in, you know what, to the wall, and you're just like, I'm going hard and I'm going to charge exactly what I need to charge to be able to get there, then great. But that's not the story for most people. Most people need to have a husband's income or a full-time job that they're doing on top of this. It is not going to automatically be something that will sustain you, most likely will not sustain you financially for an extended period of time. It's uncomfortable and no one wants to say it, but it's going to take you time. You're probably going to have 12 to 24 months of not making a ton of cash. As you're getting your feet wet, as you're learning lessons, as you're gaining clientele, as you're building up a social media following, as you're figuring out all of these different nuances of how you want to run your business and tactics and all the tech that you want to be using, this is going to take time. And all of that math that we did for earning $100K a year, that's not including any expenses at all whatsoever. So I know that I still kind of like left that sounding really bright and really shiny, but let's be practical about it. Let's say you do 25 weddings a year at $3,000 a wedding, but you still have to pay for gas, you still have to pay for tech, you still have to pay for expenses. I don't know what all of those are going to entail for you. I don't know what all of that is going to include, but your take home is not going to be $75,000. It's just not going to. I shouldn't have run with this math analogy without giving you more to go off of, but we all know that running a business costs money, right? Uncomfortable truth number 2, your confidence is going to be your biggest blockade of all time. Your confidence is it's going to be the number one thing that prevents you from earning what you need to be earning to be sustainable. Well, number one thing, not the only thing, but the number one thing. A friend of mine right now is making the transition from doing more... Gosh, okay, we'll put a price tag on it. Probably is shifting from doing like maybe $35,000 to $65,000 weddings, which is a lot. That's a lot. We're not knocking it. To now doing luxury weddings. And they literally said, like, it's 100% just networking. They've been doing this for over 10 years and they have the confidence, they have the skill set, and it's just networking for them to get there. He's like, there is no difference. There's literally no difference. There's not that big of a difference between the services that we're offering the clients. Maybe it's branding, maybe it's packaging, maybe it's sales calls. You know, there's some polishing that we're doing here and there, and it's a super analytical person. So the way he's breaking this down, I mean, it makes sense, but the confidence is the biggest blockade that they were running into until they as a company decided to take that step, decided to make that move. What does that look like for those of us peons who are not quite pursuing luxury events? I'm so glad you asked, let me tell you. That means booking all the clients. That means you look at every single client, you're like, I will say yes to you and you and you and you because I have this fear that I will not book enough. Because going back to uncomfortable truth number 1, this is not a get rich quick scheme, and for some reason we think it's supposed to, so we have to say yes to everybody so we make enough money so we can be profitable in a very short time frame, instead of being logical and going, I would rather grow smarter and say no to the people that will not be a good client fit for me, that I will not be a good industry fit for these people, whether you're a planner or a photographer or a florist. We want to say yes because we are so desperate to make money and to get this experience under our belts that we're just going to say yes to absolutely everything. Where else does confidence give this hit? Not charging enough. There's a huge, and I run into this because we go over this in the mastermind all the time. There's a huge pool of people that when they first get started, they're like, I'm not worth XYZ. Or like, I understand that introductory level coordinators in my area are charging $1,000. I don't feel like I can do that, so I'm going to charge $750. I'm going to charge $700. Well, it's going to be really hard to turn this into a sustainable business when you're not even charging the average going rate of the people around you. Point number 3 is going to round this out a little bit and toss some humility back in there. So please don't hear me in saying that you need to be charging as much as possible and really amp that up and trick people into paying you. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm encouraging you to do is take a step back and say, am I limiting my potential earnings? And am I limiting myself from saying yes to my dream clients because I lack the confidence to say no to the people that are not going to serve me, no to the people that are not going to be a good fit for me, and saying no to the potential of earning more based on my worth. The last area that I wrote down that confidence affects is your boundaries. What you say yes to and what you say no to. And we cover this a whole lot in the mastermind, where I'm a huge fan of boundaries because I didn't have any in the beginning. I didn't. I was like, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, sure. I remember my first client ever, I told them, I was like, I can help you with invitation design. I can help you with florals. You name it. I got you. I could do so much. Yay. What I didn't do was deliver that information clear enough to say it's a possibility to add that onto your package for an additional fee. I wasn't as clear as that as I needed to be. And so they heard that and went, well, all of this is included. So I was invited to their DIY floral setup day and they're like, okay, Jamie, teach us how. I thought I was just waltzing on in to be like, hey, I'm here to support. I'm showing up. Hi guys. Let's have fun putting these together. No, they wanted a floral class. I was like, this is so not what I signed up for, but I didn't have a good enough boundary or good enough communication skills to say, no, I didn't think that I was worth what I was charging, so I was trying to stuff extra things in there to make me look shinier. I have no business designing invitations. None. Do I love aesthetically pleasing things? Yes. Do I do a pretty good job of picking out aesthetically pleasing things? Absolutely, in my opinion. They're aesthetically pleasing to me. Should I be designing invitations from scratch? No, ma'am. This is pre-Canva too, so I had literally no permission. I should not have been doing anything of the sort. But I lacked the confidence to say what I am offering is enough for what I am charging. And so I would just eke over the boundaries a little bit. Be like, well, yeah, I could toss that in there. Well, yeah, I could do that. And then it just snowballs into dissatisfied customers, me dissatisfied as their planner because they're making assumptions, or I'm not having a clear enough firm no on any of this stuff. My confidence was one of the biggest blockades in my business growth, and it can be in yours as well, which leads and segues perfectly into the next point. Fake it till you make it will only take you so far. Man, there were times where I could have used a little dose of humility because it was like a pendulum swing, right? I would finish a wedding where I didn't have good boundaries and then swing in the opposite direction to be like, you know what? I'm not doing that again. Nope. I'm just going to pretend like I know what I'm doing. I'm going to charge this amount. And there was an element of that was good to a degree. How am I going to bring this back in? Because now it sounds like I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth. There was an element of the fake it till you make it that worked, right? There was an element where I was like, hey, Jamie, this is like your 5th wedding. You're not brand new to this. You're a little bit more experienced than someone who has no experience. Put a smile on your face and handle this as gracefully as possible. Right? There is an element of that. Everyone has to start somewhere. You're gonna have to do a little bit of faking it until you make it. But that doesn't mean that you cannot be open to feedback and you cannot be reflective. One of the things that we do to this day at the end of every single event, and something I did with my mom in the very beginning, and I don't even know what possessed me to get started. And I say I did it with my mom because my mom was literally my assistant for the first year and a half. I was just like, Mom, you wanna come work at this wedding with me? And she'd be like, yeah. That's how we talk to each other. But at the end of every event, I'd be like, okay, what went well? What didn't go well? What could we have done better? Was it actually our responsibility? Was it our fault? Did we miss a yellow flag that turned into a red flag? You can't always just fake it. You got to stop every once in a while and be reflective and ask these hard questions. You also need to be proactive and be a student of this industry. And I don't mean that you need to always be up to date on trends, because I swear sometimes they just recycle some of these. It's like 2023 trends are going to be this and this and this. And I'm like, no, that's the same thing from this season. It's not. I'm not saying that you have to memorize trends that are coming out, but you do need to be a student of this industry. You need to be paying attention. You probably really need to be in Facebook groups where conversations are happening. I met with a mom recently who was in the mastermind and then took a step back because she had her second kid and there was a lot going on. And she was like, I just feel like I'm just treading water. Like, I'm not moving forward. I'm not growing. I am stagnant because I'm not moving forward. And I'm about to make this analogy super cheesy, all right? She wasn't stagnant. She was treading water, yes, but she was growing muscle. You like that? Like where I took that? Just because you find yourself in a place where you're not booking clients, where you're not growing, where you're not adding on events, does not mean that you cannot be a student on this industry. I encourage you to find Facebook groups where there are couples who are planning their weddings, who are asking questions. Take note of the questions that they're asking. Take note of the responses of those that have been here before you that have good responses, and be like, I liked what you said. That makes sense. I might yoink a little portion of that and make it my own, but I want to repeat what you shared. I'm not going to pretend like I have all the answers, and I'm not going to pretend like all the answers are mine. I could literally say, actually, I was reading in a Facebook group the other day that someone said blah, 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 blah. I thought about you and I thought about this situation, and I think that's maybe the perfect solution. I'm not claiming to know all of this. I'm not faking it, pretending like this is my information. I am a student of my industry, and I'm relaying what I'm learning to my clients and to my peers. Seek out a mentorship. Of course, I'm obsessed with ours. Like, I think that the mastermind is one of the greatest joys of my life. And that is cheesy. I'm such a freaking cheeseball. I am. And I didn't know of anyone that was doing it when I was getting started. And a lot of people were super gatekeepy, and I didn't feel great turning to a lot of those resources. I don't know. It just, no one that I could find was doing kind of what I wanted out of a mastermind. Does that make sense? Like, they were doing business masterminds, but they weren't doing wedding planner masterminds. If it's not me, find someone else. Find someone else that you align with. Of course, not all advice is going to be good advice. Like, some people are really going to suck at this, or some people are going to charge for programs or licensing. Dear goodness, the amount of people that are like, well, I'm not licensed. I haven't gone through this course certification. That's probably like if we don't have a podcast about this already, we probably need to make one. So much of those licensing things are just pure garbage, pure hot garbage. But finding someone that you can turn to and ask questions, a group that you can reflect with, that you can bounce ideas off of. If you have pricing questions, if you have a logistical situation or concern with a client, who do you turn to? Because, like, let me tell you, my husband can only go so far with his construction references before he loses me. I'm like, no, it's not exactly the same thing. I need someone who understands what I'm talking about. So while your confidence is going to be one of the biggest blockades to growth, fake it till you make it will only take you so far. Uncomfortable truth number 4. It takes work to be sustainable in this industry. And I don't mean like eco-friendly. It takes a lot of work to create a business that is going to last beyond the first few years. I don't even know where the stat came from at this point. I've said it so many times, I feel like I've made it up. But most wedding industry professionals, most wedding planners, event planners, don't make it past the 5-year mark because it's stressful. And in my opinion, I think it's because they don't have boundaries, they're not earning enough money, and they are one person. This is why in the mastermind we talk about, like, not necessarily maybe using your name if you plan on building out a team or growing beyond just yourself, because there are 2 opportunities for growth in a wedding business, in a wedding industry business. 1, charge more, work the same amount of weddings, or maybe less. Or 2, grow a team. That's it. You can't clone yourself. You can't duplicate yourself. It takes effort to be sustainable, because you either have to get over your confidence issues, become a student of this industry, and really work, which I think you need to do regardless of whether you have a team or not. But that's one option. So you then feel more confident charging more to make this more financially viable for yourself to grow further. Or you build out a team to do it for you. And building out a team and finding someone else who fits your values, fits your vibe, provides the right type of customer service that you want to be providing for people is so difficult. And I don't know if it's just because, like, I have a particular way that I want things to be handled. I don't think I'm an overly particular boss. I think our motto is to treat everyone like a potential customer or a potential coworker. So every bridesmaid, I'm like, I'm gonna be sweet to you. 1, because that's just kind of like who I like to be as the person. And 2, because the amount of referrals I've gotten from a bridesmaid who was in a wedding that I worked and was like, you gotta try this Jamie chick as your coordinator. She was awesome. We really enjoyed our time with her. Like, as a bridesmaid, I loved my time with her. You got to check her out. Astronomical. Word of mouth was such a powerful tool and continues to be a powerful tool in our business. So I don't think that's like a high ask, but the amount of people that would just get it dead wrong. I should probably do an entire podcast on, like, mistakes trainees made, because I'm like, literally one of them joked about sleeping with the groom publicly at an event. Wild. Like, I didn't realize that I had to clarify that that's not okay until that situation presented itself. Team building is hard. Training people is hard. Setting up your standard operating procedures, your SOPs of like, here's how we handle things, here's how things go, is not easy, and it takes work. You're also going to need to do networking. This is not, in my opinion, networking is a non-negotiable when it comes to running a wedding industry business. Some people choose to do that in the form of like groups like WIPA, or educational weekends or trips or experiences like Wedding MBA or Engage. Is that Engage Summits? Yeah, that's one of them. You will need to kind of be committed to like making friends in this industry. You got to, because again, word of mouth is really yield you some of the best results. If you find a DJ that you absolutely adore and they keep slinging the best couples your direction, like that's someone you're going to want to keep connecting with and keep working with because you like working with them and because you guys are really aligned on who your customer base is. And all the while you're doing this while trying to train up somebody with enough information to really kill it. Right? To like really be a second version of you without just wanting to take all of your information and start their own business. That's one thing that every time I'm interviewing someone to be a potential intern or an assistant or whatever, I always say, hey, what's your goal in the industry? You cannot give me a wrong answer. Like if you tell me that you want to start your own business, that's fantastic. I will support you. Like if you want to intern with me for a few events, that's great. But you got to tell me. Don't be coming into this and work 2.5 events with me and then be like, okay, I got what I needed. I'm going to go start my own company, because that's just like not cool. So my training slightly differs based on like what their goals are. But to train someone who becomes your shadow, a second version of yourself, takes the right person and takes the right trainer. And it takes time, because again, there's a finite resource here. And that's your time. So if we go back to that math, if we return to that math of, gosh, what number should we go with? The $2,000 per wedding, right? Well, if you have a team of 5 different planners who are underneath you, that maybe you're doing a 60-40 split with, I'm not entirely sure, whatever works with you, where they're working independently but under your brand. That's another way that you can increase that income, but that takes time. This all supports the uncomfortable truth number 1 is this is not a cash cow, which probably should be one of the points of this, but I feel like it's just all inherent. Like growing a business takes time. Growing a wedding industry business takes a lot longer than you think, and it's going to be a while before it's sustainable. It's going to be a while before you're going to have the right assistance and before you're going to have the right cost to sustain you and to make this something viable that you could probably leave your 9 to 5. Uncomfortable truth number 5. If you're going to do it all, it's going to take your all. If you're going to do it all, it's going to take your all. I cannot tell you the amount of times I tell people, they're like, oh, so what do you do? And on the rare occasion I lead with YouTube, I do not lead with YouTube. It's such a weird, can I just tangent for a second? It is the weirdest thing to tell people, what do you do for a living? Oh, I do YouTube. No, it just like, I like cringe a little. So most people just think that I'm a wedding planner and that's all I do. And I just like don't delve into anything else unless they have business questions. And I'm like, step into my office. This is where you shine. Well, I like to think I shine. But people always say, oh my gosh, I love YouTube. I've always wanted to have a YouTube channel. Yeah, no, I've always thought that I could do blah, 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 blah all the time. The Sorry Girls, I was watching one of their episodes, I think a vlog of theirs. I don't watch a ton of their stuff. Surprisingly, for how much YouTube I do, I don't watch a ton of YouTube. But they said that it drives them nuts when people say that. It drives them crazy when people are like, oh, I've always wanted to do that. And they're like, then do it and just do it. But it takes so much time. People don't like hearing that if you're going to do content creation on top of a wedding industry business, it takes a ton of time. When I first got started, my YouTube videos would take me 6 hours to edit. 6 hours. Because I didn't know what I was doing. So on top of doing hair and makeup, because I love using this as an opportunity to dress up and do my makeup and like feel cute and be all put together, I know I could show up however I wanted to, right? Like my audience is incredible and I know I could just show up super, super rolled out of bed, crazy hair, no makeup. My audience might be like, are you okay? But they'd still show up for the content, right? This is something that I choose to do. But hair and makeup, writing the notes, putting everything together, then actually sitting down to record. And that's if it's a good recording day. Let's say recording takes me 30 minutes and then I would have to edit it down into something that's understandable video wise. And this is back when I didn't know editing and it would take me 6 hours just for the edit alone. And I did it every single week. And this is not to glorify myself at all. Like one thing my dad told me super early on, he's like, if you're going to do this, be consistent. Be consistent. Let people know that they can always depend on you. They can always depend on you showing up on a certain day and at a certain time. That's one platform. That's one platform that, to be fair, most people are not going to use. To be fair, most people aren't even going to touch it, right? But Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, Facebook groups, blogging. There are so many platforms that if you are going to give it your all and you're going to go all in and you are going to do all of the social media stuff, it's going to take your all. It's going to take staying up late. People don't like hearing that, people prefer the Jenna Kutcher gold digger. I developed a course in 7 days. They like that story. That story's fun. My story is very different. It took me 9 months to make the master plan because I had kids, because I was not making money off of this, because I had a house to clean. I had groceries to go buy and lunches to make and dinners to make. And it was not a very simple, straightforward process for me. And my confidence was an issue, sure. But if I was trying to do all of these things at once in the very beginning, I don't think I would have made it this far. If you are going to do it all, it's going to take your all. Social media is a rat race, dude. It's a total rat race. Now, there are massive benefits to platforms like YouTube and Reels and TikTok because they push out your content on your behalf. And there is a certain element of you got to have a social media following for social proof. You can't really get around that. Again, here's a statistic that I've tossed around so many times, I forget where I got it, but I think it's something like 75 to 80% of couples find their vendors based on their social media presence, or define how successful they are. Again, I should stop quoting percentages when I don't have the direct thing in front of me. But needless to say, if I had to hazard a guess, most couples are going to be making determining decisions based off of a vendor's social media presence. Like it or not, you're gonna have to do something somewhere. But you will not be able to do it all in the very beginning. So don't trick yourself into the idea that you will. Even with all the automations and all the apps, give yourself grace. Because on top of starting a brand new business and learning the legalities of everything and contracts and boundary setting with clients that are overstepping, and then actually learning how to plan weddings, then all of a sudden you need to learn all the dance moves for the newest TikTok craze, and then find a way of twisting it to kind of make sense for your industry. It's a lot of things, and it will take your all. It will take all your time. From content creation to batch working to trying to find new clients to going to expos to following up with people to actually planning events and then doing stuff like taxes. Give yourself grace. Let it take time, because if you want it to go quickly, it's going to take everything you got. Even if you don't want it to go quickly, it's going to take a lot of your time, because we as wedding industry professionals, like I said earlier, we just miss out on so many weekends, so many get-togethers, so many gatherings, because it's the only time we have available to make money. I'm going to pause on this one for just a sec, though, and just remember that none of this is permanent. If you're oh my gosh, this is a really intense episode. None of it has to permanently stay this way. You can look at your business in 3 months and go, I want to try something new. I want to change that. I want to test this. You do not have to continue with the same price point. You do not have to continue with a social media platform. You have to be a part of the rat race somehow. You got to show up, right? But if Pinterest is not your thing, forget it. TikTok's not your thing, forget it. Just pick one and just excel at it. Maybe try doing 3 posts a week, and you don't have to permanently be like that. Give yourself grace in the meantime, all right? And for our last uncomfortable truth, and this is I thought about not including this one. The wedding industry gives really bad business advice. Really bad business advice. Some of it is the same of what I've already shared. Okay, so I spoke at Wedding MBA. We're just going for it. We're going in. And I heard a few speakers, but for the most part, because this was my first time speaking at something like this, I was so stressed out. I didn't even leave my Airbnb for days. I didn't leave. I kept rewriting my talk. I was obsessive about it. I was really uncomfortable. It was fine. I'm fine. Everything's fine. But the ones that I did see were you just need to be confident enough to charge a lot of money. And then that is how you make money in this industry. And it's wow, that's it? That's the best you got from me? Oh, but it would also be on the heels of some sort of life story, some sort of bio of here's how I got started. Here's how much money I make. And here's why my clients love me. If you would like to do the same, then here are the steps that you need to take to make sure you're charging enough. And I find that some of the best business advice that I ever receive has nothing to do with the wedding industry. None. Nothing at all whatsoever. So I think the thing that drives me the most bonkers is how so many people just accept how you are air quotes, supposed to spend money on advertising in the wedding industry space. If I can't see a tangible return on investment, an ROI, if you cannot tell me the potential return for how many eyeballs you're going to give me, or, what's the success story of other planners in my area using this advertising avenue, if you can't give me any numbers like that, I have nothing to track. I have no way of knowing if this is going to be an effective use of my funds or not. And The Knot is one of those. And Wedding Wire is one of those. I literally canceled my paid account with them years ago because I never got a single lead that converted, ever. But that's just the norm. That's what we're supposed to do. That's how we're supposed to be handling this. Everyone in the wedding industry signs up and has a spot on The Knot, and that is what you do. And it drives me insane. Because I just wish that someone had told me early on, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Take the advertising into your own hands. Jump back to that social media conversation. I am where I am today because I chose the social media route instead of the paid advertising route. And it has cost me my time. It cost me my all, certain phases of life where I literally stayed up till 2:00 in the morning working on things. Well, it's also kind of inherently kind of what I end up doing whenever I am working on something. So I don't mean to make myself sound like a sacrificial lamb. When I'm working on stuff, I stay up late sometimes. But I chose, because I didn't have a ton of money in my business, I chose to instead spend my time. And it has returned back to me in so many beautiful ways. And I spent thousands of dollars advertising with Wedding Wire and got not a single tangible lead. In fact, I swear to you, I think that they were bots. Genuinely, I think that they were bots. I don't think it was any of them were real at all. So I could be wrong, but I really don't think I am. Magazines. That's a wild thing about being here in Texas is a lot of people will advertise in one of two local magazines in the Waco area. And I'm like, why? Why? Is this the only place that brides are going to? And it could be. I haven't really pursued doing a lot of in-person weddings since we got here because we moved in 2020. And I was like, let's hit the digital platforms hard. Let's just go. Let's just run with it. So it could have a tangible ROI, but they couldn't give me any when they were like, oh, you're new. You also have a high social media account. Will you come advertise in our magazine for $1,000? And I'm like, no. Can you tell me what conversion rates look like for anybody? Can you tell me any of the returns? Instead, I would highly recommend going outside of the industry to look for business advice because you'll probably see a much better return. Now, that's not to say that there weren't some incredible speakers at Wedding MBA. In fact, as I was re-going over the schedule from this last year, there was someone who talked about doing split testing, A/B testing. No one else, I've never heard anyone else in the industry talking about this. You probably don't even know what I'm talking about. It's where you test two different homepages and see which one gets more clicks, to see which one converts better. So many people in the industry, they just put together a sales page or a homepage and then that's it. Okay, let's hope for the best. And they don't tweak and they don't look at clicks and they're not paying attention to Instagram engagement, or they're not tracking their conversion rates on their phone calls. How many people are actually ending up booking you? This is not a conversation that happens a lot, right? I see more of how do you not get ghosted, or how do you get people to book you? But how much of this are you actually tracking? So if you can turn to outside sources to really get some of this information for business stuff, or if that happens to be something that you're finding here on this podcast or through this content, goodness gracious, I would love to connect the business world with the wedding industry world. I don't know what that disconnect is there. It's well, we just spend thousands of dollars a year on The Knot because that's what people tell us to do. And then we're just super nice and hope people book. And that's how that goes. Now, I will probably have another podcast coming out soon of the avenues that I've been really enjoying recently to promote business growth. I've been super obsessed with The Game by Alex Hormozy. Super obsessed. So much of what he's sharing, I'm like, how do we translate this to the wedding industry? How do we translate this to the wedding industry? Just don't be afraid to look around at other industries. Be inspired by different business professionals who are not doing what we're doing, but we can take what they are doing and apply it to what we've got going on. There's a lot to unpack in this episode. This went way longer than I thought it would. I did not think I'd be recording for this long. Let me know what your biggest takeaway is. I would love it if you take a screenshot of this episode, or if you decide to jump on stories and share some of this. The wedding industry is a beautiful place to be, but sometimes we just gotta talk about the uncomfortable truths. It's gonna take a lot more work than you think. Or maybe you do think and you're still in it and you're like, it's still taking a lot of work. You can do this. I believe in you. I think that this is a beautiful industry to work for, as long as we're realistic about what's going on. you know?
Obviously, this is a little bit of a deviation away from our normal content that we do here. If you enjoyed it, will you do me a favor? Jump down in those comments and let me know something that resonated or that spoke with you. I would love to hear back from you. Of course, if you would like to listen to more of the Union Podcast, feel free to check it out right here. I'll leave it down in the description box below. We've had it for literally years. There is so much content just waiting for you right over there. I hope you guys enjoyed, and until next week, bye guys!